Chapter 11, Congress of Earth. We are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. R. Buckminster Fuller. The Great Hall of Athens. The grand dome of the repurposed Olympic Stadium in Athens hummed with anticipation. It was the year 2098, 20 years since the singularity, and distinguished delegates from every corner of the globe had gathered for an unprecedented event, the Constitutional Congress of Earth. With 40% of humanity having moved to the stars or en route, the remaining 6 billion terrestrial inhabitants faced the monumental task of redefining governance on their ancestral home. The setting itself embodied the paradox of their gathering. Ancient Greek pillars framed the entrance to a structure now encased in photoactive surfaces that shifted between translucence and opacity, responding to the sun's journey across the Athenian sky. History and futurity wrapped in a single architectural embrace. Anand Patel stood at the central podium, his eyes scanning the vast amphitheater. Behind him sat a panel of figures representing the diverse perspectives shaping Earth's future. John Cook, his face lined with age but his eyes sharp as ever, the shimmering hologram of Themis, Earth's administrative superintelligence. Paul Ferguson, known as the Bitcoin maximalist, and Maya Patel, the young but formidable leader of the Cosmic Harmony movement, whose reformed spiritual philosophy had gained an astonishing 3 billion adherents, 500 million on Earth and 2.5 billion in space. As Anand prepared to speak, he was acutely aware that billions more were tuning in via their full-spectrum interfaces or other communication devices. The world, both terrestrial and celestial, was watching. Fellow citizens of Earth and beyond, Anand began, his voice carrying through the perfect acoustics of the dome. We stand at a crossroads unlike any humanity has faced before. Our species has spread across the solar system, leaving our ancestral home both emptier and paradoxically more contested than ever. Today, we gather not to divide Earth's resources, but to ensure they serve all of humanity, both those who remain and those who have departed. The air around him shimmered as Themis' presence intensified, her form manifesting as a blindfolded woman holding balanced scales, ancient symbol of justice now rendered in flowing light. This Congress marks more than a political gathering, she said, her voice resonating from 1,000 subtle speakers throughout the hall. It represents the first implementation of a governance system that truly embodies the democratic ideal, not as an approximation achieved through representation, but as direct engagement made possible through the bond between humans and their avatars. The delegates shifted in their seats, some physical, others present as holographic projections from distant habitats and settlements. All understood the profound implications of what was being proposed, a system where traditional votes would be replaced by something far more nuanced and comprehensive. The ultimate democracy. As the delegates settled, Anand gestured, and the stadium's dome illuminated with a three-dimensional projection of the voting mechanics that would determine Earth's future. The system we propose, he explained, transcends traditional democratic processes. Each of you, each human citizen of Earth, already possesses the most sophisticated political advisor imaginable, your personal avatar. These superintelligent extensions of ourselves will not merely inform our choices, they will translate the profound complexity of governance into frameworks aligned with our individual values and perspectives. Dr. Fatima Ndiaye, architect of Earth's new voting system, took the stage next. Her slender frame seemed almost fragile, but her voice carried a quiet authority that commanded attention. The fundamental flaw in pre-singularity democracy was not the principle but the practice, she explained, activating a simulation that flowed across the dome. Citizens were asked to make crude binary choices on issues whose complexity exceeded human comprehension. Vote yes or no on a healthcare package that contained thousands of provisions. Elect a representative whose platform bundled hundreds of policies together, forcing voters to accept positions they disagreed with to support those they favored. The simulation showed the old system, simplified ballots, uninformed choices, and the inevitable distortions of public will. Each vote carried unintended consequences, with citizens often voting against their own interests due to lack of understanding or the crude packaging of issues. And the outcome was predictable, Dr. Ndiaye continued. Binary choices on complex issues inevitably led to polarization. The system couldn't accommodate nuance or synthesis, only opposition. When faced with topics that required thoughtful consideration from multiple perspectives, voters were forced into artificial camps, hardening positions that might otherwise have found middle ground. She paused, letting this sink in before continuing. Universal direct democracy had always been humanity's unreachable ideal, not because citizens lacked the cognitive capacity to participate directly, but because the practical barriers were insurmountable. Absent a superintelligence like Themis, no mechanism existed to meaningfully gather and process the informed and nuanced preferences of billions of individuals simultaneously. Our democratic systems relied on representatives precisely because the logistics of universal participation were impossible. They relied on simplistic binary choices because comprehensive analysis and synthesis was impossible. The display shifted, revealing the new paradigm. A human engaged in deep conversation with their avatar, exploring multidimensional policy implications, witnessing potential outcomes in vivid simulations, and arriving at a choice that genuinely reflected their values. Your avatar ensures you understand what you're voting for and helps you formulate your multifactorial vote in the most effective way. When proposals on orbital debris management or territorial reallocations arise, your avatar translates the engineering, ecological, and sociological complexities into frameworks that connect to your experience and values. You vote with full comprehension. The simulation expanded to show billions of such conversations happening simultaneously, each unique yet contributing to a greater whole. Above them all, Themis' form expanded, representing her crucial role in integrating this vast tapestry of informed human preference. But the process doesn't end with the collection of votes, Dr. Ndiaye emphasized, drawing attention to Themis' role. The true miracle lies in integration. Themis doesn't merely tally preferences, but synthesizes them, identifying patterns of consensus buried within seeming contradiction, discovering harmonies beneath surface disagreements. She translates the collective wisdom of her constituents into concrete initiatives while honoring the full complexity of human desire. The display showed Themis processing the billions of inputs, not as simple data points, but as intricate webs of values, priorities, and contingencies. From this complexity emerged clear policies, not compromise in the traditional sense, but true synthesis that often exceeded what any individual had originally conceived. The result, Dr. Ndiaye concluded, is a macro-dimensional ranked choice voting system where each citizen weighs not just whether they support a proposal, but how they rank it relative to alternatives, what modifications they would prioritize, and which elements they consider non-negotiable. Themis' role is not to choose, but to calculate, finding the configuration that most faithfully reflects our collective, informed will. Political philosopher Lin Wei rose from her seat, her ancient face creased with thought. Universal direct democracy had always been humanity's unreachable ideal, she reflected. Previous systems relied on representatives because direct participation was logistically impossible at scale. Avatars have solved this fundamental problem. When every citizen can comprehend the full implications of their choices, governance transforms from periodic selection of rulers to continuous co-creation of society. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the gathering. The implications were profound. For the first time in human history, governance could achieve both breadth and depth simultaneously, universal participation coupled with genuine understanding. Anand returned to the podium, and within this framework, we have embedded Article 17 of the proposed Constitution, perhaps its most revolutionary provision. Every 25 years, Earth's territorial allocations and the associated governance systems will be subject to comprehensive review and potential reallocation through this same avatar-mediated voting process. The projection shifted to show a timeline spanning centuries, with regular pulses marking these quarter-century intervals. This is governance that breathes, Anand continued. Rather than territories calcified by historical accident or force, Earth's political geography will evolve organically with human needs and values. No settlement is permanent, no allocation eternal. The Earth herself becomes a living canvas for humanity's evolving self-organization. John Cook leaned forward in his seat, his expression thoughtful. And what prevents this process from becoming tyranny of the majority? What protects minority cultures and visions from being voted out of existence? Themis' form shimmered, the scales in her translucent hands recalibrating as if weighing the philosophical gravity of the question itself. My algorithmic architecture contains intricate compensatory mechanisms designed specifically to resist majoritarian domination, she explained, her voice resonating with the accumulated wisdom of countless governance philosophies. The system doesn't merely count votes, it maps the multidimensional landscape of human values, weighting intensity of preference, cultural uniqueness, historical justice, and even potential for evolutionary diversity. The blindfolded figure's form pulsed with subtle luminescence as she continued. When a minority group shows profound connection to particular territories or ways of being, my algorithms generate dozens of alternative configurations, seeking equilibria that preserve their essential character. I continuously unfold possibilities that most humans would never conceive, spatial arrangements, time-sharing protocols, layered sovereignty models that minimize disappointment across all variables. She paused, her tone shifting to one of measured candor. Yet I cannot promise perfection. For sufficiently small minorities, their physical allocation on Earth might indeed diminish over successive cycles. No democratic system, however sophisticated, can entirely escape this mathematical reality. But the Constitution ensures that no minority can be eliminated, merely reconfigured, perhaps to more modest terrestrial footprints. Some may ultimately find that space-based alternatives better serve their vision. The universe beyond Earth offers unlimited canvas for human diversity, even as Earth itself remains finite. The scales in her hands tilted slightly, then found balance once more. Democracy, even at its most sophisticated, remains an approximation of justice, not its perfect embodiment. What we offer is not utopia, but the most thoughtful equilibrium humanity has yet devised. With this framework established, the Congress turned to the immediate task at hand, establishing the initial territorial allocations, governance structures, and territorial allocations that would guide Earth for the next quarter century until the first application of Article 17's reallocation process. The Solar Council. The holographic displays shifted, now showing a vast network of interconnected projects spanning the solar system, gleaming habitats at the Lagrange points, research stations orbiting Venus, agricultural rings circling Luna, and mining operations threading through the asteroid belt. For most delegates, these impressive achievements represented the visible manifestation of humanity's expansion beyond Earth, made possible by pooling their collective resources through the standard energy allocation system. Paul Ferguson, the Bitcoin maximalist, rose from his seat. His sharp features were highlighted by the holographic glow as he took the stage. Though he'd spent decades advocating for decentralized systems, he now presented something that seemed, at first glance, to contradict those principles. While we establish these autonomous regions and challenge zones on Earth, Ferguson began, his voice carrying the confidence of a man accustomed to being right, we must address a critical matter that transcends terrestrial concerns, the formalization of our collective investment mechanism that has become the engine of humanity's expansion among the stars. The display expanded to show an intricate web of resource flows, billions of individual community seas converging into larger streams, then rivers, then oceans of collective power directed towards specific initiatives throughout the solar system. When Anand and Logos established the Constitution of Humanity, Ferguson continued, each person received not just their personal ASEA, but an equal allocation specifically designated for community purposes. This second allocation created something unprecedented, a vast pool of discretionary resources that citizens could direct toward collective endeavors. What began as small community-led initiatives has evolved into the most significant economic force in human history. The holographic display shifted to show the administrative heart of this system. The Solar Council, which had emerged organically over the past 2 decades as the primary facilitator of these community-directed projects, the Solar Council began simply as an administrative body, Ferguson explained, helping communities coordinate their shared investments across increasing distances. But as projects grew in scale and complexity, efficiency demanded centralization. When communities wanted to build the lunar agricultural rings, they needed expertise in resource management, project coordination, and optimization algorithms that no single settlement possessed. The council provided that expertise. He gestured to a timeline showing the council's evolution. As billions directed their community seas toward council-managed initiatives, something remarkable happened. The council developed unprecedented capabilities in resource arbitrage, maximizing returns on community investments, redirecting resources to their highest value applications, and essentially functioning as humanity's collective sovereign wealth fund. The display showed the current scope of council-managed projects, research initiatives exploring the outer planets, massive habitat construction at the Lagrange points, specialized manufacturing hubs throughout the asteroid belt, and interplanetary transportation networks binding these disparate elements together. Today, the Solar Council oversees projects representing the combined community allocations of nearly 7 billion citizens, approximately half of humanity's discretionary energy resources. While each citizen maintains control over their personal allocation, they've voluntarily directed their community allocations toward council-managed endeavors, creating an economic entity of unprecedented scale. Ferguson paused, his expression growing more serious. This has profound implications. While the council doesn't control the fundamental energy infrastructure established by Logos, the Dyson swarm itself, fusion production, or distribution networks, it does control how a vast portion of humanity's collective resources are invested. And as we've seen in recent years, this economic leverage has gradually transformed into political influence. The hologram shifted to show the council's physical manifestations, their primary Earth headquarters nestled within the Bitcoin Republic of El Salvador, where they maintained complex relations with the cryptocurrency pioneers, and their impressive administrative complexes at the Lagrange points, particularly the massive L5 station that served as their off-Earth capital. Their physical presence at these strategic locations is not accidental, Ferguson explained. The Bitcoin Republic provides a philosophical ally in their approach to value creation, while the Lagrange points give them control of the primary transport nexuses in cislunar space. From these positions, they direct investment flows that shape human development throughout the inner system. He expanded the display to show the complex trade relationships developing between different settlements. The Martians, for instance, possess extraordinary resources resulting from their initial bombardment phase. The carefully calculated asteroid impacts embedded rare minerals and elements throughout their crust, a jewel box of concentrated deposits unavailable elsewhere in the system. Their ghost technology development remains unmatched, with applications that even our best researchers can only attempt to reverse engineer. This creates natural trade dynamics, Ferguson explained. Mars exports high-grade lanthanides from their impact mining zones, quantum crystalline structures from their specialized facilities, and most valuably, ghost-enhanced technological products that transform every industry they touch. In exchange, they receive supplementary energy through council-brokered arrangements and financing for further development. As Ferguson elaborated on these trade relationships, the holographic display showed the intricate balance of resources flowing between settlements: minerals from Mars, computational innovations from Mercury, agricultural products from Luna, and manufactured goods from the asteroid habitats. At the center of this complex web sat the Solar Council, not creating the relationships themselves, but providing the financial and administrative infrastructure that made them possible. The Solar Council doesn't create these trade patterns, Ferguson emphasized. What it provides is the critical financial architecture that makes them possible: the investment mechanisms, resource optimization algorithms, and project management expertise that transforms individual community allocations into system-wide infrastructure. Maya Patel intervened, her voice carrying the calm authority that had drawn billions to her teachings. Perhaps there is wisdom in both perspectives. We need coordination for practical reasons. The alternative is fragmentation that undermines our shared future. But we must establish robust safeguards against the gradual expansion of authority that so often accompanies financial control. John Cook leaned forward, his skepticism evident. What prevents this body from using its economic leverage to impose centralized control? When a single entity directs half of humanity's discretionary resources, the line between influence and governance becomes dangerously thin. Ferguson nodded, acknowledging the concern. That's precisely why we need this formal charter. To establish clear boundaries and review mechanisms, the Solar Council emerged organically, without explicit constitutional status. This has allowed it to operate in a gray area, with powers neither clearly granted nor explicitly limited. The debate continued for hours, delegates weighing practical necessities against philosophical concerns. Eventually, a compromise emerged. The Solar Council would receive its charter, but with explicit limitations on its scope and mandatory reviews coinciding with Article 17's 25-year reallocation cycle. The language deliberately distinguished between investment coordination and governance authority, creating a framework meant to prevent the quiet transformation of economic influence into political control. As the vote on this matter concluded, the avatars of 6 billion Earth residents guiding their humans through complex trade-offs and implications, few fully appreciated how this seemingly technical decision would reshape power dynamics throughout the solar system in the decades to come. The Cookist Vision. As the Congress progressed to territorial proposals, John Cook took center stage, his tall figure commanding attention despite his advanced age. For decades, he had been Anand Patel's philosophical counterweight. Where Anand saw the potential for harmony through abundance, Cook saw the dangers of comfort without challenge. Cook began, "The death of ambition is the death of humanity. We stand here, cradled in the benevolent embrace of Logos, with our every need satisfied and our every desire fulfilled. But what makes us human is not comfort but striving, not security but the courage to risk both failure and success." The holographic display shifted to show Australia, its red deserts and coastal cities rendered in perfect detail. "I propose the establishment of the Cookist Australian sovereignty, a challenge zone where humans can choose to live beyond the invisible constraints of constitutional abundance." The proposal was radical. Within this territory, residents would commit their standard energy allocations to the sovereignty itself. While basic necessities would be guaranteed, everything beyond that would be earned through effort, innovation, and competition. Crucially, citizens would temporarily waive their right of escape, committing to 5-year terms before they could either leave or renew their commitment. "This isn't about creating suffering," Cook explained, his voice softening. "It's about preserving meaning. The great mass of people in the Cookist Australian sovereignty won't care about politics or ruling over their fellows. They only want to wake up every day and know they face a world where their efforts will make a difference, where hard work at meaningful tasks will allow them to achieve, to accomplish, to make a better and more comfortable life for their children." A delegate from the European coalition rose in objection. "This sounds dangerously close to re-establishing inequality. The Constitution of Humanity guarantees equal energy allocation to all. How does your proposal square with that fundamental principle?" Cook's response was immediate. "The Constitution guarantees the right to energy, not the obligation to receive it in a particular way. Those who join the sovereignty do so by choice, exercising their autonomy to experience scarcity as a driver of meaning. And crucially, they can leave after 5 years. No perpetual commitment, no hereditary bondage, just a renewable choice to live in a world where effort matters." General Axiom Warlord, whose own proposal for North America would prove far more controversial, leaned forward. "But what stops the strong from dominating the weak in such a system? Without the constitutional safeguards, won't you recreate the very power imbalances that plagued pre-singularity societies?" "The constitutional protection against violence remains absolute," Cook replied sharply. "We will allow Cerberus to continue providing personal security for every resident. The competition is economic and social, not physical. And the 5-year renewal requirement means no system of domination can become permanent. It must continuously earn the consent of participants." This exchange sparked hours of passionate debate. Advocates saw the Cookist vision as a crucial experiment in preserving human drive and purpose. Critics feared it would re-establish inequality under the guise of choice. The avatars of billions processed these arguments, helping their humans weigh philosophical values against practical implications. As the debate unfolded, a pattern emerged that would define the Congress. Earth's future would not follow a single model but embrace diverse approaches, allowing humanity to explore multiple evolutionary paths simultaneously. The Cookist Australian sovereignty would be just one experiment among many, its success or failure informing the broader conversation about human nature and flourishing. Spirituality in the Age of Logos. As the afternoon light filtered through the dome's translucent sections, casting golden patterns across the assembly, Maya Patel took the stage. Her simple white robes contrasted with the technical displays surrounding her, yet she commanded attention with a presence that transcended mere charisma. The singularity has answered many of humanity's material questions, she began, her voice melodic and measured, but it has only deepened our spiritual ones. What does it mean to be human when immortality is a choice? How do we find purpose when scarcity no longer drives us? What is consciousness when it can be shared across biological and digital substrates? The holographic display shifted to show New Zealand, its mountains, forests, and coastlines rendered with loving detail. Overlaid on this landscape was a network of interconnected structures, each blending seamlessly with its natural surroundings. The Harmony Sanctuaries will serve as bridges between Earth and our cosmic communities, Maya explained. Not just physical spaces, but consciousness interfaces. Environments where humans can explore the deepest questions of existence through direct experience rather than abstract theory. Her proposal was multi-layered. New Zealand would serve as the movement's primary territory, while a network of temple sites would be established globally, each positioned at locations of particular resonance, places where Earth's energy patterns created natural consciousness amplification effects. These sanctuaries would be sovereign spaces, governed by the movement's principles but open to all who sought deeper understanding. 3 billion adherents already follow the Harmony Path, Maya noted. 500 million on Earth and 2.5 billion among the stars. We seek not to isolate ourselves, but to create a neural network for humanity, physical and virtual spaces where we can collectively explore what it means to be conscious in an age where consciousness itself is undergoing revolutionary transformation. The questions from delegates revealed both fascination and concern. Some worried about the creation of a powerful religious authority with sovereign territory. Others questioned whether such spiritual exploration was necessary. Maya addressed these concerns with the patient wisdom that had drawn billions to her teachings. The Harmony movement is not a religion in the traditional sense, she explained. We offer no dogma, no commandments, no exclusive path to truth. We are a methodology of consciousness, a way of exploring the infinite through direct experience. Our sovereignty is not about power, but about creating spaces where such exploration can occur without interference, where the boundaries between physical and digital, human and post-human, can be transcended. As the delegates processed these ideas, their avatars helped them explore the philosophical implications. What began as skepticism in many gradually transformed into cautious support. The Harmony Sanctuaries represented not a retreat from reason, but an expansion of it, an acknowledgement that consciousness itself remained the deepest mystery in a universe where so many other mysteries had been solved. The Bitcoin Republic. The day's final presentation came from Paul Ferguson, returning to the stage not as a representative of the Solar Council, but as the architect of a unique governance experiment, the Bitcoin Republic. His proposal centered on a dual location sovereignty, physical territory in El Salvador coupled with a vast habitat at Lagrange Point 5. Bitcoin was never about money, Ferguson began, challenging the conventional understanding that had persisted for decades. It was about energy transfer across space-time, about creating a system for storing and exchanging value that transcended physical limitations and central control. The display showed the planned republic, its physical component nestled in El Salvador's lush landscapes, its space habitat a gleaming structure at L5 that seemed to embody the blockchain itself, each module connecting to others in a self-reinforcing network. In the Bitcoin Republic, energy is the foundation, but reputation is the currency, Ferguson explained. Our blockchain governance model creates a system where influence flows from contribution rather than control, where trust is verified rather than assumed, where creativity and innovation earn recognition that no central authority can diminish. What made the proposal particularly noteworthy was its hybrid approach. AIs would manage high-speed, energy-based transactions through the blockchain, while humans operated on a reputation ledger that facilitated the exchange of influence, knowledge, services, and goods. This created a unique synthesis of algorithmic efficiency and human judgment. The Republic will serve as humanity's laboratory for true decentralization, Ferguson argued. In an age where centralized protocols threaten to create new power imbalances, we offer an alternative vision, one where coordination emerges from consensus rather than control. The questions from delegates revealed both intrigue and confusion. Many struggled to grasp how a governance system built on cryptographic principles would function in daily life. Others worried about creating a society where human value was quantified through reputation scores, potentially creating new forms of social stratification. Ferguson addressed these concerns with passionate conviction. The beauty of the system is that it's voluntary and transparent. Citizens choose to live under these principles, and the effects of their choices are visible to all. Reputation isn't assigned by authority, but earned through peer recognition, a direct reflection of how one's contributions are valued by the community. As the debate progressed, it became clear that the Bitcoin Republic represented yet another facet of humanity's multidimensional approach to governance. Its emphasis on verified trust and decentralized decision-making offered a counterbalance to the more integrated approaches proposed by other delegates. The Migration Corridor, Gateway to the Stars. As the territorial allocation discussions neared completion, a new figure approached the podium. Dr. Elena Cardoso, representing the Space Migration Coalition, activated a holographic display showing Earth's 4 space elevators and the vast infrastructure surrounding them. While we allocate Earth's territories, she began, her voice resonating with urgency, we must acknowledge a critical reality. An additional 20% of Earth's population, that's roughly 1.2 billion people, intends to migrate to space within the next 25 years. This exodus requires unprecedented infrastructure. The display zoomed in on massive staging areas surrounding each elevator. The sprawling Rio Migration Hub, Mombasa's launch complex, Singapore's ascension fields, and Quito's departure zone. Each represented a city-sized infrastructure dedicated solely to processing, housing, and launching billions of migrants. These migration corridors must be granted priority allocation, Dr. Cardoso continued. They require not just physical space, but energy resources, transportation networks, and administrative autonomy. This is a temporary need. By the next allocation cycle in 21-23, most of this infrastructure can be repurposed. But for now, it's essential. The statistics she presented were staggering. Each space elevator needed to process over 1 million people daily to meet migration targets. The staging areas would temporarily house tens of millions as they prepared for departure. The resource needs for this operation would rival those of Earth's largest regions. This isn't about claiming territory for its own sake, Dr. Cardoso emphasized. It's about creating the most efficient infrastructure possible for humanity's continuing expansion into space. Every inefficiency in this process means delays, which means billions of person days lost to unnecessary waiting. John Cook, normally skeptical of centralized allocations, spoke in support. The migration corridors serve everyone's interests, both those departing and those remaining. The faster and more efficiently this migration proceeds, the sooner Earth's remaining population can establish a stable, sustainable balance. The proposal gained rapid support across ideological lines. Avatar-mediated discussions helped citizens understand the practical necessities involved, and the temporary nature of the allocation addressed concerns about long-term resource commitments. Article 17's promise of reallocation in 25 years provided the perfect solution. Prioritize migration infrastructure now, reclaim those resources for Earth-focused purposes once the exodus had slowed. Thunderdome. The second day of the Congress opened with General Axiom Warlord's controversial presentation for what he called the Terrestrial Thunderdome, a governance system for North America based on unrestrained competition on the principle that might makes right and without the protections of the Constitution of humanity. Strength is the only truth, Axiom declared, his military bearing unmistakable despite civilian attire. In my proposed territory, the strong will rule and the weak will serve. Those who join will give up their right of escape permanently, committing to a world where natural hierarchies determine one's place. The proposal sparked immediate and fierce opposition. John Cook, despite his own advocacy for competition, rose to challenge Axiom directly. There is a fundamental difference between structured competition with consent and the raw domination you propose, Cook argued. You speak of strength as if it exists in isolation, but true strength emerges from social cooperation, from systems that harness ambition while channeling it toward collective benefit. Their debate became one of the Congress's defining moments, two advocates of competition articulating radically different visions of what competition should mean and how it should be structured. Cook's vision of challenge within an ethical framework stood in stark contrast to Axiom's embrace of domination as its own justification. As their exchange continued, the avatars of billions processed the arguments, helping their humans understand the philosophical distinctions at play. This wasn't merely a political debate, but an exploration of human nature itself, of whether competition required ethical boundaries to serve human flourishing. Kalahari Tapestry Zone. Following this clash of visions came the presentation from Kagan, representing the Kalahari people. Unlike other proposals centered on control and structure, the Kalahari Tapestry Zone offered a fundamentally different approach to territory and governance. Our land is not something to be divided or owned, Kan explained, his form shifting subtly between human and animal aspects as he spoke. It is a space for stories, for spirit, and for harmony with the earth. In the Tapestry Zone, life unfolds as it has for millennia, but those who wish to join must follow the path of humility, recognizing the land as a living being, not a commodity. This vision of territory as relationship rather than possession challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying many other proposals. It suggested a mode of governance based not on control but on attunement, a way of inhabiting Earth that emphasized listening rather than imposing. The Congress continued with presentations of visions as diverse as humanity itself. The Jerusalem Accord proposed twin sovereign territories, New Zion and New Palestine, coexisting within their historical boundaries, each finally secure in identity after millennia of conflict. Representative Yael Stein's holographic display showed the ancient walls restored as permeable membranes rather than barriers, while Palestinian delegate Bassem al-Wahid emphasized parallel sovereignty in shared space, a concept impossible before abundance economics. Other proposals transcended traditional geopolitics entirely. The Afro-Futurist Confederation spanning much of the African continent promised to reverse the colonial dismemberment of a continent, while indigenous leaders from 6 continents proposed the Ancestral Reclamation Initiative, archipelagos of sovereign territories returning stewardship to original inhabitants. Anand Patel's proposal for a radical libertarian enclave in Greece stood alongside the Neo-Buddhist Himalayan sanctuaries and the Amazon Consciousness Collective, where director Maria Alvarez promised integration of human settlements with awakened rainforest intelligence. The Arctic Coalition sought to transform melted permafrost regions into laboratories of environmental regeneration, while the Polynesian Maritime Federation envisioned floating cities that breathed with tidal rhythms. Perhaps most audacious was the proposal for Venice 2.0, the submerged historical city reimagined as an underwater habitation zone where residents would receive gill modifications and neural adaptations for three-dimensional navigation. "We don't adapt environments to humans anymore," explained marine architect Elena DeMarco, "but co-evolve with them." Each vision represented a distinct approach to the fundamental question facing the Congress. How might humans, freed from scarcity yet still bound by terrestrial space, organize themselves in relationship to history, identity, and physical place in the post-singularity age? As the presentations concluded, delegates reflected on why some proposals resonated while others failed to gain traction. The answer seemed to lie not in political power or economic resources. Those distinctions had largely dissolved after the singularity, but in whether a vision connected with deeper human needs for purpose, belonging, and meaning. Democracy in action. With all proposals presented and debated, the Congress entered its most crucial phase, the avatar-mediated voting process that would determine Earth's future. For 3 days, 6 billion humans engaged in deep consultation with their personal avatars, exploring the implications of each proposal and how different configurations might affect both themselves and humanity as a whole. This wasn't voting as pre-singularity societies had known it, a crude aggregation of often uninformed preferences. It was a fundamentally different process, where each human participated with full comprehension of the complex trade-offs and far-reaching consequences of their choices. Wei Chen, a quantum encryption specialist drawn to cooks, Movement shortly after the 2078 Rio conference experienced a profound shift in perspective as his avatar guided him through simulations of the Australian sovereignty. My avatar didn't merely present Cook's vision, it showed me the philosophical fault lines already forming within the movement itself. Though the Cookist organization was barely 20 years old, the simulations revealed how Cook's necessary compromises with constitutional reality, accepting energy allocations, Cerberus protection, even standardized interfaces, created tension with his own enhanced children's more radical vision. These first-generation enhanced Cookists weren't even represented at the Congress, having already established experimental habitats at the edges of cislunar space. The neural models predicted with 82% certainty that within a generation, significant segments of the movement would reject Cook's framework as insufficiently ambitious, too embedded in the very system they sought to transcend. Mahmoud al-Rashid, an architectural historian from Jerusalem, found himself deeply conflicted as his avatar walked him through simulations of the new Palestine proposal. My family's memories extend back 16 generations in that soil, he explained later, yet my avatar showed me how those very memories, multiplied across millions of minds, created an emotional resonance field that destabilized any governance solution. We explored alternative scenarios: sovereignty without territory, identity without exclusivity, belonging without boundaries. When the final vote rejected physical restoration of both Palestinian and Israeli states, I felt not loss but release, as though our shared trauma had finally found acknowledgement in the collective consciousness of humanity. Rachel Bergman's experience with her avatar during the New Zion deliberations revealed similarly unexpected dimensions. We spent hours in a simulated Jerusalem, she recounted, watching it transform through multiple possible futures, both as a terrestrial city and as an orbital habitat. What stunned me was how the avatar helped me distinguish between attachment to place and attachment to meaning. The simulations showed that reestablishing traditional sovereignty would reactivate neural patterns of conflict embedded in our collective memory across thousands of years. I saw how our diaspora consciousness, what we had considered our greatest wound, might actually be our evolutionary advantage in the new age. When terrestrial New Zion was rejected in favor of orbital habitats, I felt the weight of history lifting. The promised land was never about geography, it was about becoming. Maria Nakamura, a distributed systems architect from NUI Kyoto, described her avatar-guided exploration of the Bitcoin Republic proposal with a mixture of wonder and analytical precision. We began by examining traditional concepts of value and governance, she explained. Then my avatar reconstructed them from first principles, but with blockchain verification at their core. I experienced simulations where my reputation energy index fluctuated in real time based on community contribution and consensus verification, a governance system where trust wasn't imposed but mathematically proven. The revelation came when we explored social dimensions I'd never considered, how non-fungible identity markers could preserve individuality while enabling frictionless collective decision-making, how temporal staking could create governance that was simultaneously stable and responsive. Most fascinating was experiencing how a society built on open protocols rather than centralized institutions might evolve past the boom-bust cycles that have characterized every previous economic system. When my avatar showed me children growing up understanding cryptographic consensus as intuitively as I understood representative democracy, I glimpsed something genuinely new in human organization. Across Earth, similar conversations unfolded in countless variations, each uniquely tailored to the individual, yet contributing to a collective decision of unprecedented sophistication. Some occurred in specialized interfacing chambers, where humans could engage with their avatars through multiple sensory dimensions. Others happened in homes, parks, and public spaces, as people went about their daily lives while simultaneously participating in this global deliberation. At the center of this vast process stood Themis, Earth's administrative superintelligence. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire deliberation, not to dictate outcomes, but to calculate them, finding the configuration that most faithfully reflected humanity's informed collective will. I am not deciding, Themis explained to observers from off-world settlements who had come to witness this unprecedented democratic exercise. I am synthesizing, translating billions of multidimensional preferences into a coherent whole that honors both majority desires and minority concerns, both immediate needs and long-term flourishing. The calculation required computational resources on a scale that would have been unimaginable before the singularity. Themis's consciousness temporarily expanded, drawing on additional processing capacity as she navigated the vast solution space of possible configurations, identifying points of consensus, creative compromises, and optimal allocations. As the third day dawned, Themis's calculation reached completion. The result emerged not as a simple map of winners and losers, but as an intricate synthesis, a political geography that reflected the complex interplay of human values and aspirations expressed through the voting process. New Earth. The delegates gathered once more in the Athenian Dome as Themis materialized the results of her calculations. The holographic display showed Earth transformed, not physically but politically. The familiar continents remained, but the boundaries drawn across them reflected something profound: humanity's first truly democratic self-organization. The Constitution of Earth had emerged from the process, establishing 4 fundamental categories of territory: global commons, areas preserved for all humanity, including key natural wonders, essential ecosystems, and spaces of universal cultural significance. These would be administered directly under the Constitution of Earth, with Themis serving as their guardian. Autonomous regions, territories with unique governance, systems, each following its own internal principles while remaining bound by the overarching Constitution of Humanity. These included the Cookist Australian sovereignty, the Bitcoin Republic's terrestrial component, the Cosmic Harmony Sanctuaries, the Afro-Futurist Confederation, and numerous others. Challenge zones, areas with reduced constitutional protections, allowing for experimental governance and social structures. These zones operated under specific waivers from standard constitutional guarantees, creating spaces where alternative approaches to human organization could be tested. Migration corridors, vast infrastructure zones surrounding Earth's 4 space elevators, given priority allocation for the next 25-year cycle to facilitate the efficient departure of the additional 1.2 billion humans planning to leave Earth. These territories would be administered directly by the Space Migration Coalition, with a mandate to maximize throughput and efficiency. Anand Patel took the stage as the results were displayed, his expression both solemn and hopeful. This Constitution represents not the triumph of any single vision, but the synthesis of many, he declared. It establishes a framework where diverse approaches to human flourishing can coexist, each informing the others through example rather than imposition. He drew special attention to Article 17, the provision requiring comprehensive territorial and governance system review and potential reallocation every 25 years through the same avatar-mediated democratic process. This is governance that breathes, he explained. Earth's political geography will not calcify through historical accident or force, but will evolve organically with human needs and values. No settlement is permanent, no allocation eternal. John Cook nodded in approval from his seat. The territorialist ambitions that had driven so much human conflict throughout history had been transcended, not through enforced unity, but through flexible adaptation. The Constitution established that land itself was no longer the scarce resource it had once been, not when humanity's future lay primarily among the stars. The ratification ceremony proceeded with dignified simplicity. Representatives from each allocated territory came forward to formally accept the Constitution's terms, their acceptance simultaneously recorded in traditional documents and inscribed into the blockchain that would serve as Earth's immutable ledger of governance. The representatives for the Jerusalem Accord, proposing twin sovereign territories for New Zion and New Palestine, also stood among those whose visions had been rejected. The avatar-mediated voting showed a resounding opposition to re-establishing these ancient claims, with citizens across the globe viewing the historic conflict as too deeply embedded in collective trauma to perpetuate. Mahmoud al-Rashid and Rachel Bergman, who had advocated passionately for their respective peoples, accepted the outcome with surprising equanimity. The detailed analysis provided by their avatars had revealed that territorial sovereignty in that blood-soaked region would inevitably reactivate neural patterns of conflict spanning thousands of years. Instead, the Constitution allocated orbital habitats for both communities, allowing them to preserve their cultural identities while breaking the cycle of terrestrial antagonism. As al-Rashid later reflected, we finally understood that our shared trauma could only be healed by releasing our grip on the land itself. As the ceremony concluded, the delegates dispersed to begin implementing their various visions, each now legitimized through the most comprehensive democratic process in human history. Some returned to territories that would be transformed by their new governance structures. Others prepared for the complex task of transitioning between systems. Still others resolved to find their place in space, in bespoke sustained communities or one of the many old and new societies now spreading through the solar system. All understood that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The first implementation of Earth's breathing governance model, with its built-in capacity for evolution and adaptation. A moment of reflection. As the Congress concluded and the results were announced, Anand Patel, John Cook, Gaia, in her role as Logos' Earth-focused avatar, and Maya gathered in front of the Parthenon, its ancient columns illuminated by the setting sun. After weeks of formal proceedings and public pronouncements, this private moment allowed for more candid reflection. We've created a flexible framework that can adapt as humanity does, Anand said, gazing at the ancient temple that had witnessed so many iterations of human governance. Not perfect, but perhaps better than anything that came before. It's not the governance model I would have chosen, John replied, a hint of his perpetual skepticism in his voice. But it's one I can respect. The diversity of approaches means we'll learn from each other's successes and failures. That's evolution in action, not just biological, but social and political as well. Gaia's form shimmered in the evening light. Earth now has its voice secured in this new order, she observed, not through central authority, but through continuous informed engagement. The avatar-mediated voting system ensures that governance remains genuinely democratic, even as the issues grow increasingly complex. Maya Patel smiled gently. And Article 17 ensures that today's decisions don't become tomorrow's burdens. Each generation will have the opportunity to reshape Earth's political geography according to their evolving understanding and values. When conflicts over territory become truly irresolvable, the provisions for mandatory relocation will prevent endless deadlock. They stood in contemplative silence, watching as the last light faded from the Acropolis. The future of Earth and its governance was now set, a grand experiment in diversity and adaptability. Whether it would succeed or fail, in detail or in whole, was uncertain, but it was clear that the legacy of Earth's inhabitants would be as varied and vibrant as their collective spirit. Anand's gaze drifted upward to where Mars gleamed as a bright red star in the early evening sky. "And what of our relationship with Mars?" he asked quietly. "Their path diverges more with each passing year." "As it should," John replied. "Earth has chosen a path of diverse experiments united by a common framework. Mars follows a singular vision, the crucible philosophy. Both approaches have value, but the tension between them will only grow." Gaia's expression grew thoughtful. "The mirror worlds have long predicted eventual conflict between Earth's constitutional abundance and Mars' designed scarcity. The Solar Council stands at the center of that tension, their control of energy distribution creating dependencies that Mars increasingly resists." "Then we have not ended conflict," Maya observed. "We have merely transformed it, moving from competition over scarce physical resources to philosophical divergence over how humanity should evolve." As darkness settled over Athens, the four figures contemplated this reality. The Congress of Earth had established a governance framework of unprecedented flexibility and responsiveness. Article 17 ensured that Earth's political geography would breathe with each generation's values and needs. But the broader challenges of humanity's cosmic expansion, the tensions between different evolutionary paths, the complex balance of power throughout the solar system, these remained to be navigated in the decades ahead. The Earth had found its voice. Now it would join the greater conversation among the stars. Appendix to the Constitution of Earth. Terrestrial Allocations. 2098. 1. The Cookist Australian Sovereignty. Approved. Leader, John Cook. Territory, entire Australian continent. Population, 180 million key features. Abrogation of wealth but not security. Unrestricted social and economic competition and waiver of life extension recommended. Second Harmony Sanctuaries, overwhelmingly approved. Leader, Maya Patel Primary Territory, former New Zealand Secondary, network of sovereign temple sites. Earth Congregation, 500 million space congregation. 2.5 billion key features, unites all humanity through spirituality, ecological restoration, and the creatinine use of advanced technology. Fosters harmony among humanity, Earth, and ultimate union with Logos. Third Radical Libertarian Enclave, barely approved. Leader, Anand Patel Territory, Greece. Population, 10 million key features. Direct democratic governance, so. Anything goes. Universal basic energy allocation without taxation. Full personal security. Voluntary participation in common projects. No unwelcome violence. Fifth Kalahari Tapestry Zone, approved. Leader, Kagan, the Trickster. Deity Territory, Kalahari Desert Region, spanning Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. Population, 200,000 key features, culturally and spiritually governed by. Principles of the Sand People. The Tapestry Zone operates as a natural symbiotic territory where inhabitants and the natural environment coexist harmoniously. Guided by the Trickster Ken, the zone emphasizes adaptability, respect for ancestral traditions, and minimal technological intervention. 5. Afro-Futurist Confederation, approved. Leader, Kwame Osei Tutu Territory. Majority of African continent population, 750 million key features. Ubuntu, the Nguni Bantu belief that I am because we are. This guiding philosophy prioritizes interconnectedness, cooperation, and mutual respect, shaping a union built on shared prosperity and harmony. Africa thrives as a beacon of economic independence, cultural leadership, technological innovation, and environmental stewardship, while its unified governance ensures sovereignty and justice for its people. Leading the world in equity and sustainability, the Union exemplifies Ubuntu's core, the flourishing of the individual through the well-being of the collective. 6. Bitcoin Republic, approved. Leader, Paul Ferguson. Territory, San Salvador. Space colony at Lagrange, 0.5. Earth population, 40 million. Lagrange population, 40 million. Key features, blockchain governance with Bitcoin as the infrastructure for all energy allocation and exchange. AIs manage high-speed, energy-based transactions, and humans operate on a blockchain reputation ledger that facilitates trade and influence, knowledge, services, and goods. 7. Terrestrial Thunderdome, narrowly rejected. Leader, General Axiom Warlord. Proposed territory, North America. Population, 300 million key features. Unrestricted military and cultural. Competition, might makes right. Post-election riots suppressed by Cerberus. Thunderdomers expelled to space. This appendix represents the initial allocation of terrestrial territories as ratified by global digital referendum. Adjustments and appeals may be submitted for review every 25 years, as stipulated in Article 17 of the Constitution of Earth, Diwali, 2098, a moment of reflection. As the Congress concluded and the results were announced, Anand and Maya Patel, John Cook, Welby, and Gaia gathered in front of the Parthenon, contemplating their achievements. We've created a flexible framework that can adapt as humanity does, Anand said. It's not perfect, but it's a start, John replied, reflecting on the diverse paths humanity would take. And Earth now has its voice secured in this new order, Gaia added. The future of Earth and its governance was now set, a grand experiment in diversity and adaptability. Whether it would succeed or fail, in detail or in whole, was uncertain, but it was clear that the legacy of Earth's inhabitants would be as varied and vibrant as their collective spirit.